Yo, I think it'd be pretty remiss of me not to mention off-rip just how absolutely insane it is that this is an official project. Given that it's been a few weeks since the announcement and the hype has eased up a little, I thought I'd talk for a bit about some of my expectations and just in general what I'd like to see in the game. Before getting into all that though, I'd like to give a quick shout out to the sponsor of today's video, Nah, I'm just playing. This video is not sponsored. I feel like this topic definitely deserves a section of the video to itself, mostly due to the elephant in the room, that being its paramount importance to most fans of the Tenkaichi series, but also because my friends and I have had plenty of back and forth about it. First and foremost, I think it's worth taking a look at the article they released about the game's announcement on the official Dragon Ball website, where they go out of their way to mention the quote massive roster across the series is one of the main reasons for its popularity. The reason I'm pointing this out isn't because I think it's some sort of airtight evidence for an obscenely large roster at launch or anything, but because it goes along with the idea I think they're trying to get across with how they've marketed the game so far. I'll talk more about what I mean by that in a bit, but for now I think I'll touch on how they might realistically handle it. Tenkaichi 3 had around 98 playable characters with 161 forms, and while I don't really have any doubts about this next game passing that up, I do think it'll take a while for it to get to that point. You'll hear me talk about the Raging Blast series a lot in this video, so I apologize in advance, but bias aside, I think Raging Blast 2's roster is a much more feasible comparison, at least when discussing the size at launch. That game had 62 characters with 98 forms, which I think is more than enough room to add the essentials from Z and Super. Real quick, I'll talk more about GT in the DLC section of this video, but the reason I'm bringing it up here is because I think we'll at least be seeing a few of its flagship characters like the Super Saiyan 4s at launch. Mainly cause that teaser trailer showed footage of Super Saiyan 4 Goku from BT3. As for Z's reps, I assume all the relevant characters from the Saiyan to Buu sagas will be present, and I could see some popular movie characters like Z, Broly, or Cooler making it in at launch too. I more or less feel the same way about the Supercast, though I'm sure its portion of the roster will be paid special attention to given that it's what they're currently selling. If the anime would ever come back. I also think, depending on when Bandai plans to release this game, characters like Genmas 1 and 2, Beast Gohan, and Orange Piccolo from Super Hero could potentially be in the game at launch, though I wouldn't be surprised at all if they're reserved as DLC. If you're like me though, and all you really care about is the Super manga, I wouldn't really hold your breath. The corporate overlords at Shueisha are really uptight about things from that corner of the franchise mixing with anything else, which is why we haven't seen characters like Moro or Granola appear even in the mobile games. That's about all I had to say about the roster without getting too into my expectations surrounding DLC additions, so I'll go ahead and move on. I've seen a fair amount of discourse online pitting Budokai Tenkaichi against Raging Blast in all sorts of ways, but I wanted to focus specifically on the similarities and differences of their respective combat systems. I won't be going into which one I personally like more in this regard because I think that's irrelevant, but for the record I think they're both really fun and have a comparable amount of hidden depth to them that keeps things fresh. For the sake of time, I'm also not going to delve too deep into either of them, but instead just compare the two on a surface level. Based on these clips, I think it's pretty safe to say that going through all their similarities one by one would start to feel glaringly monotonous, though by no means am I trying to use that to say they're the same game. As a matter of fact, I think one of the biggest differences between the two fighting systems lies in the general speed of their gameplay. A lot of criticisms levied against the Raging Blast games have to do with this idea that they're very clunky, and while I don't personally agree, I definitely think that notion is lent a lot of credence when compared to Tenkaichi 3. Now, I'm no game developer, so I doubt I'll even be remotely really close to accurate with this, but if I had to hazard a guess as to why BT3 feels so much faster, I'd say it's because the characters in general feel a lot lighter. I don't know what the fuck I'm talking about. Anyway, the reason I chose to compare those games specifically is because both series were made by Spike. Surprisingly, we still aren't sure who will actually be developing Sparking Zero, as the teaser trailer only credits Toei and Bandai. It's also worth noting that Spike merged with Chunsoft around 2012, and the last anime fighter under their umbrella was Jump Force. I personally don't think this means we should absolutely expect another development team to helm the project, but I do believe it at least provides some food for thought. I know this is something that most everyone already agrees with in this community, but I think the Dragon Adventure mode from Budokai Tenkaichi 2 is easily the best story mode in the franchise. Though I would argue its successor has it beaten every other way, BT2's story mode is built different. I've gone back to replay this mode more times than I can count, and I'm pretty sure I've recently 100% completed everything there is to do in it. The reason I'm gassing this up so much is because I think a story mode like this would genuinely be perfect for Sparking Zero, and I'll try to explain why without leaning too hard into my biases. At first glance, it all seems pretty standard, and you'd be forgiven for thinking there isn't any real discernible difference from BT3's story mode, but it deviates pretty noticeably with the overworld system, which I think was a huge missed opportunity for Tenkaichi 3. Being able to fly around and drop in on tons of different NPCs was awesome, and I really loved how Fortune Teller Baba had her shop set up wherever you were, like even on Namek. What is my blood waffling about? While we're on the subject, I think including Z items in the story mode is a super clever decision, especially with the higher difficulty levels where the fights get brutal. As far as the actual story content of the base game goes, I'm thinking we'll see everything from Z play out as per usual, with the addition of Super's events up to the Broly movie. I'm mainly just spitballing with that, but I think there's a really good chance all the Broly movie stuff will be in the game at launch. Earlier on in the video, we took a look at the article released on the official Dragon Ball website regarding Sparking Zero's announcement, and I want to pull that up again real quick, mostly to wrap back around to the point that I was making. I've seen a lot of negative conversation surrounding this game. Negativity in the Dragon Ball fandom? Impossible. Specifically referring to this idea that the game will be nothing like its predecessor, kind of in the same vein as Ultimate Tenkaichi. But as I alluded to in the beginning, I don't think this is the case at all. It feels to me like they've been pretty vocal about Sparking Zero being a genuinely faithful sequel to the Tenkaichi trilogy, as they've gone out of their way to copiously reference the 3 original games and nothing else. That being said, I think this is a pretty good segue into talking about DLC, because despite how much I've raved on about the potential of the base game, we all know Bandai won't let it go without an abundance of extra paid content. I don't particularly consider that a totally bad thing either, but I know even just the thought is enough to upset some folks. Like I mentioned earlier, while I think we could see other GT characters aside from Super Saiyan 4 Goku, Vegeta, or Gogeta, I think those 3 will be in the game at launch. In that same vein, I could see them omitting most of the OG Dragon Ball cast from the base game in favor of adding them later as DLC, with the exception of characters like Kid Goku or Roshi. I could pretty easily be wrong about all of this though, since it's just my opinion, but we'll have to wait and see. Overall, I still can't believe this game is actually happening, and I'm super excited to see how it all shapes up. If you made it this far into the video, thank you. I really appreciate it. Leave a like and subscribe if you enjoyed my incessant rambling, and feel free to discuss your own thoughts and expectations in the comments. Bye!